speed.
Is that the name of the film school? Is no?
Yeah, that's right. No, I've said it twice. Twice.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's not.
All right, we're at NAB 2012, and we're having what I'm calling the Bloggers Breakfast. Let's see if we can make this an annual event. Last year we got together with Mitch and Koo, and now we got some even cooler bloggers here. So we'll do some introductions.
We got dissed in there somewhere.
I'm Tony from NextWaveDV. I'm founder and host.
Dave Dugdale from Learning DSLR Video.
Planet Mitch from Planet5D.com.
I'm Sean from NextWaveDV.com, and I do almost everything. Except for the blogging. No, I'm kidding. I'm Joe Marine. I'm one of the writers for No Film School.
Ryan Avalis from ICANN.
What do you do?
Some of the marketing. I actually wind up doing some of the blogging. Go figure. That's why I'm here. I need to learn some more and get some more time to do it.
We're giving all our secrets.
No, AutoCAD.
Yeah, drafting.
Okay, so now that we filled up on breakfast and all you can eat bacon. That was a crispy piece. Let's talk about the show. So people are calling this the year of 4K. Even though everybody, all they did is announce, half of everybody announced 4K. They didn't actually release a 4K camera.
They might be 4K ready.
Yeah.
Or if you're Panasonic, you might have released or announced a 4K Varicam that might come out in a year and a half, might not. I don't know. What do you guys think? Are you ready to shoot 4K?
No.
Why?
I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right.
I had somebody send me a 4K video the other day, and I can't play it. It won't play on my MacBook Pro. It won't play on my iMac. I have to beef up everything, and I'm not ready to spend a ton of money getting pro equipment. So
I'm kind of interested in just messing around with 4K, see what I can do with it in post. I mean, it gives me a little bit more room in post, because that's primarily what I do. Well, just like because, if you follow what we've been doing with our studio with Tony and John there behind the camera, we just built that cyclorama in our studio, so we can set up just a wide shot, and then I can cut around in it much easier for clients that want HD, and then I can just do a little bit more artsy-fartsy stuff with it.
I don't want 4K to be a lazy man's thing, but it does allow opportunity for flexibility in post.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, would you rather shoot photography in a 22 megapixel camera or in a 10 megapixel camera? Even if you're going to give your clients a 10 megapixel output, having that extra megapixels adds flexibility for a professional. So that's what it is to me. I don't want to be outputting 4K any more than I want to be giving my clients, photography clients, 20 mega photos for their website.
I don't really see anything in the consumer end of much of a benefit on the consumer end.
Not at least in the medium.
Not right now.
Yeah, within the next year to 2 years, especially seeing how grading and other post options are going, I think that there's a lot of potential, as you guys mentioned. I feel like that's the next frontier. As long as you can handle the workflow, and I certainly can't, I need to beef up my systems too on top of it, even if I'm running 10 or 12 bit in the first place. But regardless of that fact, the outputs still aren't going to be there, at least for the next 3 to 4 years.
longer than that.
We'll be joking about it in 5 to 10 as it is anyway, until it goes mass consumer and all of the retail products that are actually viewing this. So, I mean,
but
it's
will
imminent.
it ever go mass consumer?
I think that it will.
I think it will out of just inevitability, but not out of necessity.
But I mean, we're already looking at the development of the AK sensors as it is in the first place. So 4K is sort of becoming this de facto idea. I wouldn't say standard, because obviously there is no standard yet between all of these cameras that are coming out. And then there's the Blackmagic 2.5.
That's how it was with HD. There was HDV, and then there was,
Yeah, but I argue that the consumers aren't going to want it.
Unless they shove it down their
Well,
throat.
yeah,
but they are shoving it down
It doesn't
their
really
throats.
matter. I want to know, like all the
percentage.
3D TVs.
Right.
Like you're gonna get it anyway.
Yeah, I
I
don't
want
know the
3D
percentage
TV.
of
Yeah, and I know people that have
are
3D
bought
TVs
because
that
they
don't
have
watch
to.
it in 3D.
Right.
anymore.
But not even
So
3D was last year. 3D.
people aren't buying Blu-ray.
Well, that's because the streaming is becoming more and more prevalent. I buy Blu-ray, but I'm an
Nobody
audio
does.
video file.
You're the exception because
Anomaly.
nobody's selling Blu-ray.
Look at someone like Sony. Think about when they realized that they can make a lot more money not selling HD TVs anymore, so they're just going to stop doing it, and then all you'll have is 4K. So I think it's going to get to a point where
that's all they'll be is 4K. So
And that may be
you won't have a
5,
choice.
7 years from now.
Yeah,
but
I think
that's
it'll
not
be-
going to be 1 or 2.
No,
like
I think
some people
I
say.
actually think it'll be 5 years from now. Where they'll stop.
Everybody's
they'll stop.
upgraded their TV just
Right.
the last few years.
Right. So why are they? Yeah, they're not going to need another TV. So
I'm still running on a CRT tube, man. Okay. I'm taking it nice and easy. My computer is mostly where it's at with streaming media.
Right.
I don't know. I think 4K is a tool for professionals, and
Yes.
it's, I think, just like high frame rates. You don't need to shoot everything at 240 frames per second, but having that option in an affordable level is great. If I'm able to get a 4K camera that has a streamlined workflow, isn't red, where I'm constantly dealing with that headache. 4K in a better digestible system, either through Sony's existing setup or future recorders that are a little bit more computer friendly in the post world, then I think that I would love to work in a 4K environment.
I think Paul Antico said it really well on the Digital Convergence podcast a couple of weeks ago when we had him on. Because he said, when I can do 4K for free, meaning I don't have to buy a whole bunch of new equipment, new computers, new monitors, that's when I'll do 4K.
Yeah.
And I think that's true for the vast majority. Now, you're right. There are a certain level of pros that are going to do grading and cropping and all that other stuff. But for the vast majority of people, even who are producing video now, they're not going to touch it till it's live.
I talk to a lot of people that shoot on red, and they're saying that most of their clients can't tell the difference between red and a DSLR. So what is the red advantage to them? Well, it's easier post workflow, and it gives it more flexibility and stuff like that. If you're on shoot and you're trying to get things done quickly, DSLR if you approach DSLR correctly, they're a good learning tool because you don't have as much forgiveness. You have to do it correctly, otherwise it will look like pure crap. And so by learning on that, and then you move over to a camera like a red, and you have so much more flexibility, you can get to be a little lazy. But if you're working on a client video where you need to be in and out, you need to be very fast, and something, maybe there's a section that didn't get lit correctly or something like that, you have a little bit of latitude to work with that in post. But at the end of the day, they're starting to feel competition from people with DSLRs who are lowering the overall budget for other companies that are interested. So what is then the defining point? And I think that it's starting to go into that like high frame rates and stuff like that. Sony with the
I feel like it's
FS700
selling
is
more
good.
image and hype than anything else, though. I mean, if you were to look at the majority of music video shooters that are using red cameras, for example, a lot of them, yeah, you're right. Most of the clients aren't able to tell the difference between a red and a
half the
DSLR.
stuff going to the web anyway, so it's like
Exactly. So you're not going to, for the most part, notice that difference. It's going to make a big difference in color grading and post, yes. However, in the same token, you're really selling the hype and the idea that this is going to sell more to that client that may or may not know the difference in the first place.
Right. So what is one of the advantages to red, besides the raw workflow, besides everything else? High frame rates. That was pretty much it. If you wanted to get high frame rates, you either got a red or you got like a Phantom or something like that. And so that's why I'm super excited about the FS700, because high frame rates, HD workflow, you're not dealing with raw, you're not dealing with red, you're dealing with a traditional system that with the FS100 that's proved itself a good solid codec system and a good sensor. I got a chance to see some of the results of the Revenge of the Great Camera Shootout, and I'm not really allowed to talk much about it, but it's there are cameras there that impressed me that I wouldn't have expected to impress me. That's all I'm going to say. And when that comes out, I definitely check out people watching it, so a little plug for it. But you're going to see some cool stuff there. But the FS700 is a cool camera for high frame rates, and I know it's going to get overused, but I've said this before, at a $10,000 price point, it's attainable to the professional shooter, something I consider myself, and something that I plan on buying, but it's not going to be a pure bloodbath on Vimeo of slow-mo stuff everywhere and everybody thinking that they have one. So
it's just high enough price.
yeah, and I'm actually happy with the price. There are people out. I saw one person that got in a Twitter argument with me. They kept saying, well, Sony needs to make this camera lower if they want to compete with the HVX 200 or something like they were like, this camera needs to be, if it's going to be the next whatever DVX 100. I'm like, that's not the target. No. They have the FS100. That's what that's for.
Right.
The FS700 is for a different target market, and they're going to be selling both of them right next to each other.
Right.
So.
I think one thing people don't think about is how much data uncompressed 4K actually takes up. And I was doing calculations actually early this morning, and it's for 12-bit, actually for 10-bit 4K raw uncompressed, it's like a terabyte an hour.
Wow.
So you've got a terabyte an hour. You're dealing with a lot of space, and I actually think one of the bigger ways that 4K won't be immediately available to a lot of people is hard drive space, because hard drives haven't actually moved as fast as the acquisition formats have. So we've got all these crazy, big, huge files, but storing them is very, very expensive.
Yeah, solid state drives really haven't kept up either. They're not going to make it.
Right.
So until the next thing comes along.
Right.
I mean, even aside, storage space itself in the last year to 2 years because of events has doubled.
Yeah,
Doubled
right.
in price.
More expensive, right.
Yeah. So I mean, that's
Yeah.
one more reason to make it that much harder to attain and complete your workflow and upgrade.
Right.
Like we're shooting in the XA10 right now for convenience sake, and I'm actually using a low bit rate on it. I'm using like 7 megabits a second. For the purpose, this is a web video, it's not that big of a deal. And if most of the things end up on the web, they're compressing the crap out of it. Right. So like RAW is great for film and stuff like that, but if you're not in that workflow, then it's overkill. And yeah, you're spending thousands of dollars on hard drive space just because you want that raw file.
Right. No, I mean like your project may look cheap in the beginning, and then you realize you're spending thousands and thousands to back up all the stuff that you just did. So it ends up there are hidden costs to doing raw 4K, which is why the Red workflow is interesting, because they have the compressed workflow. So we'll see. I think we'll see more compressed raw formats come out, just because. I mean, I think even in the next 5 years, we're not going to really be able to deal with raw uncompressed that easily at the lower budget levels. It's going to be hard.
And I think the excitement too about 4K and everything is that it's the gear geek out factor, because I think there's a lot of people walking the floor too that they're not going, my client really needs 4K. They're going, 4K is really freaking cool. And we were talking about when I got into digital photography at first, and it was like 22 megapixel, 26, and announcing these huge megapixels. And I had a professional photographer tell me, he's like, it's megapixel masturbation. If you are composing your shots correctly and you're setting up your lighting correctly, do you really have to shoot that big? And so if my output is to do headshots for a website, for me to shoot with my 5D and to produce a 24 megabyte photo is ridiculous. If my client doesn't need it, so I think that's 4K too, is like, it's the geek out factor, but how many people really have a clientele that have that need? And there are people that do, but like, for web output, I mean, especially you taking such a gigantic file, a terabyte per hour, and you're doing all this stuff, and then building it all the way down to 720p for YouTube. That'd be a little ridiculous, so.
And the D800 just came out with 36 megapixels.
Yeah.
Who needs it?
Yeah. Again, it's in the same boat. It does raise the question for me though, because I've been looking a lot in terms of the cloud editing that's been recently talked about. I think it's reaching a consumer level rather effectively. However, on a professional level, there's still a lot to be desired, especially because of the bandwidth available in terms of uploading.
Right.
If there can be an active solution and/or you have the workforce and/or the powerhouse of servers themselves to be able to handle and upload at the same time of doing all of your shooting, something else along those lines where it's live updating or live uploading. That way you can actually handle cloud storage at the same time, pull back when necessary, download the metadata and/or necessary file space that you need, and be able to remotely handle that. But even then, that's looking at the next 2 to 3 years at minimum.
Right. I mean, it's the U.S. telecommunications companies have a hard time trying to do high speed across the country. That's why,
Our infrastructure's so old, and
it's just not there.
It's
Yeah.
so expensive
South
to be able
Korea's
to
got the
upgrade it. They don't do
infrastructure,
it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, other countries everyone's got 50 or 100 megabit connections.
Right.
It reminds me,
So
it's telephone lines, it's cable, it's the railroad,
Right.
it's like all this stuff. It's
Right.
just-
It's all connected. Yeah.
IP, man, it's all IP.
Yeah.
That ought to be the issue that the presidential candidates address this year.
Oh, and that was when the pirate party came out a few years ago in the first place in terms of intellectual property
Well,
control.
think of the standard. Think of the standard broadband. The broadband standard that they came up with is some ridiculously small number.
Yeah.
It's something that just will not compete in 10 years with what everyone.
Broadband.
Yeah. It's what it just they need to raise the standard.
And in China, like they're going like fiber optic and everything because
Right.
they're expanding technology towards the western part. towards the western part of the country.
You've got to make the pie higher.
But it's funny because it's like, because the technology didn't exist, there's none of the fights and the battles. I mean, so we're talking about dial-up and you're fighting, and then we're a business and we're trying to get internet speed in order to transfer files, and it's just like, so it's just funny because there's such a, no, they're still sticking around. We still have companies in our market that are still take media, that are still like, I mean, we had clients that call and they're like, so you guys have an HD camera, right? I mean, so it's,
It's a good point. Yeah, 4K is, I don't know if people are going to actually understand what 4K is. Like he was mentioning, we did a shoot for the Department of Homeland Security, and the first question they asked me was, do you own an HD camera? Because the previous guy had to rent an HD camera, and it was just like, oh my gosh. And I was looking at their video, and I mean, it wasn't bad. It's so bizarre to me because like, some of the companies that are in, and I think this is a great time to be. Honestly, our company, Creative Edge Productions, has been around for 3 years. We just moved into a new studio. Some of our competition in the area is downsizing. Like they're moving to small areas. We just moved into a studio, and I think this is the best time to be in the video because they've been in video for 10, 20 years. They are so invested in their tape-based media and everything. And so for them,
They're trying to squeeze every penny out of it.
You're still paying it off.
Yeah, there's exactly.
oh yeah,
Right.
exactly. So
Right,
that
you're at a
workflow,
disadvantage if you've been around for a while.
that workflow, they're talking. I worked in TV production for a while, and I was a director of a multicam TV show, and we had HPX 370s, and we had a switcher, and we had the tape-based media, and there was all of that required, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for the entire thing. Now, I'm not saying everybody's a multicam shoot, but even for them, if they're looking at similar camera systems, they're really, really invested in it. And unless you're doing event media or news gathering, that format isn't desired anymore. People want the large sensor look, and I'm not going to say shallow depth of field because it's not the entirety of it. They want the large sensor look. You get the dynamic range, you get the film look that you're achieving with it. That's what people want.
And she was doing such a good job of trying to not get on camera too. Well, I think the thing is too, is like those companies failed to advance in technology. Because I came out of graphic design, and I had a professor that was like, he was a marketing director, and he cut and sliced and sketched advertisements. Okay, but then he worked his way all the way through, and every time there was an adjustment, and then they started doing stuff on computers and everything else. Okay, so the guy has advanced with technology for the last 35 years to stay a professional in his industry. So I think, there's not like this, like, well, just skip 4K like HD was skipped. I'll never catch on. We'll just stick with tape-based media. I do think there's a balance of knowing, because I do think eventually it's going to be like HD TV, or you go in and be like, oh, I just want a tube TV, $100. Well, they don't make those anymore. Right. So I think 4K will do that, but I think it's just the right balance. I just don't think like right now it's like, I'm going to go out and buy a 4K because I think it's a couple of years. But yeah, I mean, I completely expect you walk into Walmart and you're like, okay, I need a camcorder for my kid's birthday, and they go, great, we've got 4K, we've got and then inevitably somebody will get left behind. Yeah. So I think there's the balance of realizing, because there will be one year where everybody's at NAB and you're going to go, okay, no, this is the actual year of 4K. Not the year of the 4K hype, but the year that 4K matters.
Right. When there are 4K displays that aren't at booths that need 4K displays, that's really when it's going to be 4K.
Yeah, that's good.
It's when you've got someone who's unrelated to 4K having a 4K display just showing off whatever.
Yeah, and it's part of the presentation.
Right.
The whole workflow that they're using to be shown is part of the presentation.
Right.
All the video that they had shot with is part of the presentation. And it's a package deal. It is a standard. People actually know what it means. There becomes a standard, and on top of that, they want my receipts. Oh wait, those are yours. Even aside from that, though, I mean, how much time do you think that's really going to be, though, before we really see that becoming a normal event?
I think it's 4 or 5 years, really.
Yeah.
Well, like
At least.
What was it? 2009, 2010. The HDSLR was craze, and everybody was like rushing to get their thing out. And it was like, this works with HDSLR, yeah. And then last year was really kind of like, you felt like they started to refine it. Like people are actually coming up with unique stuff, and now it's kind of like, well, this is our HDS, and it's almost like talk. This works with a regular DV cam. This works with a HD SLR. It's just kind of like normal talk. Like, it's just one of the tools that people choose to use. I'm sure 4K is eventually going to get that. You're like, 4K, and then you're like, okay, so we have the 4K option, we have the HD option, depends on what your workflow is. And because I remember on Wikipedia for some reason, and I was looking at different resolutions, stuff like that, and they were talking about in Japan they were already in discussions about ultra high definition and blah blah blah. Now it's actually finally defined as 4K.
Right.
You know, but back then they didn't know what the hell to call it.
Right.
And now
It's a good thing. It's a good thing they didn't call it.
really importantly high. Yeah,
Way more than normal.
yeah. But 4K is actually a descriptive term. Yeah, because previously we were just like, what's HD? High definition. Well, that doesn't define anything. It's just because there was 720p and there was 1080p.
Mitch feels like dancing.
Yeah.
4K is a misnomer.
You can hear the background
Yeah.
music.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah. Even that.
I'm
But
dancing on my 4K.
Today you've been silent.
I've shot with the Red just for a few minutes and I've edited with it, and that's the only experience I've had. Is just that brief experience. But
Now, what I mean, do you do much client production, or do you just pretty much?
I'm starting to do some like corporate videos type stuff, but no, it's just mostly personal passion type projects that I do on my own. I don't really do.
Are you finding that your end result? Are you giving the clients HD, or they ask you for?
Well, I've only got like 1 or 2 clients, so they're not really asking. In fact, I was just doing this corporate video where I showed them kind of a sample of what I was doing. They walked in, they saw it, and then I took them down in my basement studio. And the guy looked at the camera, and I had a T2i and a 5D Mark III, and he's like, "We're shooting." That was done on those, and it was like he was amazed, you know. So he was expecting some larger camera.
And I think that we talk about this a lot on our show, but it all doesn't matter what the camera that you shoot at. It matters how you use it. The stabilization gear that you use, the lighting equipment, getting a good understanding of that stuff. I think that 4K is emphasis. See the stabilization.
John, the human grain.
I just wanted to do like a nice little reveal.
A movie maker.
Orange juice.
So yeah, there was a time when I had my HDSLR and I was like, had to have a kit around it just so that they didn't think I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Like, at least give me a chance. I'll show you. Once you get to see the footage, you'll be fine. Now I get clients who are just like, so what are you shooting at? Yeah, it's my small HD monitor and I'm good to go. All I need is just a camera and then I'm like, yeah. And I have clients that just say, what are you shooting on? 5D. All right, can you give me Technicolor Cinestyle? It's like they know the workflow. They don't even
Which is a good
care.
thing.
Yeah.
It's a
they
good
don't know
thing.
the quality. All they know are the buzzwords.
Right.
That's the funny thing. I remember hearing a story a couple of days ago where they wanted to use a red Ari Alexa concept.
I was getting ready to say, I'm scared of the client.
I want to know what that camera's like. Tell me, what does it take to shoot with that camera? And I think the guy mentioned to me, he was like,
Duct tape both of them.
exactly. Or does it count that all I have to do is just put red in front of Ari Alexa and that'll be the next best camera?
Because red 5D.
Yeah, exactly. They won't know the difference in the end of the workflow. So if you have the balls and are willing to lie about the hype, then by all means go for it.
Right.
But otherwise,
My fear though is the clients that try to be tech savvy is them being like, well, I really want this shot 4K.
Right.
And then you're going to spend an hour on the phone explaining to them why 4K is not that
Right.
big of a deal for the
Right.
project.
and it was a similar case in that story in that they weren't willing to budge on their red Ari Alexa. They weren't willing to budge at all. They were going to shoot with it, and there was no question about it. There was no interest in education on the consumer part whatsoever. So how do you fight like that with a client, or do you just roll with the punches and keep moving? And I mean that's really the best you can do.
You just ignore and just move on.
Yeah, just go yes,
Yeah.
sir, and do it. Be a yes man and keep moving. Yeah. Oh well.
You know what's funny? I think what regular people, even sometimes clients, don't understand are frame rates and aspect ratios. Just like really simple stuff that they just don't understand, like the difference between 30 and 24 and what that actually looks like and what that actually does to what you're doing. And they don't really understand it, and you have to actually show them what's going on. And you need to work with them to actually make them understand that stuff. So it's like sometimes they might not even HD, but they might just not even understand frame rates. Just simple, basic stuff.
I feel like as filmmakers, though, not only do we have to learn to shoot that way, but we learn to think that way.
Right.
We don't already come up with a method. I mean, some of us are already at the point where we're thinking of something and trying to come up with a creative way to do it, and then the next cutting edge company comes out with that great tool that you go, oh, that matches my thought process. Or we're looking at it going, I can figure out how to use this, how to adapt to it, whether I want to shoot in 30 or 24 based on whatever medium I'm working in.
Right.
However, in the case that you're talking about, there's no question that they just don't know, nor do they know what to expect.
Right.
So without your ability to prove it to them on a ready basis, it's hard to be able to educate a consumer on that
Right.
level when you
You
have
almost
a
want
lot
to
of
hand them a
clients.
90-second educational video.
Yeah,
This is
be like,
24
right,
frames.
this is where you're
30.
looking- yeah.
This is shallow depth
Right.
of field. This is not.
This is
a
what
red,
I,
this is a 5D.
and on top of that, this is what I do, and this is how you're going to, yeah, and this is why it's worth it to buy me.
Right.
There's two different, and we've been talking almost simultaneously about two completely different schools of thought. One is,
Well, you can go ahead.
Go for it.
Go ahead.
Go.
I was gonna say you might want to wait a second. Come on, John, to hear me scream. Stand up.
dolly in.
Get going.
Move around.
Look at that height.
All right, back to one.
Thank God for that articulating screen.
we've been talking about two different schools of thought. One is filmmaking, one is commercial production. We've been talking kind of simultaneously, but at some fundamental level, they're two different things. Because I've had gotten into very long Twitter arguments with unnamed bloggers that not here. These are good people, but other bloggers that are like that complain about the cameras out there from Sony, from Canon, for the higher end ones, saying I can shoot everything on my DSLR and it's fine and it's all artistic. I said, okay, that's artistic, but I'm not dealing. Artistic doesn't pay the bills. My clients pay the bills, and if I have a jib and it gets overused, but I also know that my clients like the jib and they pay for it, and I want that. 4K, if it comes to that, I will, that's why the 700 intrigues me, because I like the high frame rates. Again, high frame rates are going to get overused, but my clients are going to pay for that, and those are what pay the bill and the rent and keep Sean working.
So you're an enabler.
I'm an enabler.
Yes, you're an enabler. Well, I am
Instead
too,
of making
because
it
I want to get paid the
The term is we.
Yeah. So we're an enabler.
Yeah,
So,
you have to be, right?
Yeah.
When I'm doing my own film project, I can.
Oh, you guys gonna cut this together?
I don't know.
I think we're just gonna let it roll.
Yeah. But when I'm shooting my own film project, I will choose exactly when a jib shot is motivated and exactly when I want to use slow frame rates and stuff like that. When I'm shooting a commercial project and the client says, what'd be really awesome is if we have like a balloon popping in slow mo. Like, all right, it's gonna be like an extra $3,000, but okay. Like, that's literally how the conversation goes, and it may sound bad, but that's the world of it.
Right. Unfortunately, like even in the post world, because I do the editing for just about all the projects we do. I have experience, and we've run into before. I know what's best and a way to cut it for the best experience, but the client wants it completely different, and you have to be able to bend. Right. There are things where I'll just be okay. I'm just going to do what you want to do. That's fine. But if it's just totally wrong, I won't bend on it. I usually explain why, and if the client's reasonable, they usually are okay with that. It's like I just won't use it for my portfolio. We're not going to showcase that as my work. I'll go ahead and do whatever you want because you're paying me.
Right.
But I'm not going to showcase that. That's my job.
Right.
But I think the thing too is, there's some tech savvy clients and there's whatever, but I think people they like certain shots and styles, and then it becomes our responsibility to say whether I want to put this on a 4K projector to be able to say okay it's 4K, or they say I really like shallow depth of field or they like the way that it's blurry behind the lady on this one shot. Because that's their fuzzy. But it becomes our responsibility to use the correct tool. And I think the thing that happens with I'm seeing here a lot is like people are sitting here and they're going, it's going to make me a better carpenter is if I just get all electric tools. And you're going, okay, but you need to learn how to frame with a hammer and nail first. And that's me. I run around and it's cool gear, but I know where my experience level lies. So for me to run out and to spend $30,000 on a C500. Or even the 1D, I do stills, and great camera, it looks cool, but for me to take that type of investment, and I think that's the other balance is saying, where do you rank skill level, what are the appropriate tools, because at some point I will outgrow my 5D, whether it's the drop off in blacks or highlights or other things, but I'm not there yet enough so to be able to say, it's time for me to move to 4K.
So this raises two questions for me then. What about the $3,000 price range? And on top of that, what do you see and what people do you see jumping onto that bandwagon? Will it be a niche market, or do you think it'll become something that's more broad spectrum?
Yeah, I guess I'm the low. That's what we always joke about is when I blog stuff, I'm always like the low budget guy. I have a homemade floor dolly, that I built. Rollerblade wheels and the whole thing. So no, I think that I think it'll be cool because I think people are transitioning. Like they're realizing that the home camcorder. Even the 16-year-old kid that's like, I want to do it, grabs mom's home camcorder, and then his initial goal is, okay, I don't want to shoot with something my mom bought at Walmart for $700. No offense to Walmart, great products. So I think like for me, like a guy like me is like, I can spend $3,000, and then it being at 2.5K, then it's like I still have a massive amount of resolution. It's still a lot of latitude. The 2.5 is not, And so I think people just want I want a 50 megapixel camera, and it's like, okay, so would you settle for 25 megapixels? Okay, great. So I don't know. I'm not the consumer guy. That would be like one of these like video geek guy questions.
No, the Blackmagic does intrigue me. I probably will buy one. I don't know how much I'll use. I'll buy one.
Do you think it's going to be used more for commercial work or for more film-oriented stuff?
I think it's a lot of people are comparing it to the S16, the digital Bolex, and the digital Bolex looked very like a period piece camera, almost like a lomography look to it. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I think it's a stylized look. I wouldn't buy it as a camera that I would use for everything. The Blackmagic looked a lot flatter, looked more controllable. So I think, it's basically what it is to me is it's a 13-stop DSLR with RAW and stuff like that. Is it the end-all be-all camera? No. But what they're introducing is the same thing that HDSLRs introduced, 3-4 years ago now, that you can shoot shallow depth of field on a small form factor and not lug around the giant depth of field rig. Now you can shoot RAW and 13-stop latitude on a smaller form factor, not having an external recorder slapped on and not having a red giant thing. Well, how perfect is it? I'm sure it's got quirks. I'm sure there's rolling shutter issues, or I'm not guaranteeing that, but I'm sure that there's something wrong with it. That's going to say, well, that's not a purely professional tool. And what's going to, the professional, when you look at like Shane Hurlbut and Vincent LaForêt, some of these higher end guys, like they used the DSLR because it provided them a good tool at the time. But now that there's the C500 and the 1DC and all that stuff like that, they've got the budget to drop $15,000 on a camera, and just to get rid of like a small quirk, like there's a little bit of aliasing here. That's $10,000 worth camera to me. I'm like, I can't do that. I'm like, okay,
looks like
we won't
deal with aliasing.
We're not shooting on tweed jackets, all right? That's just what we're not doing. But
we're getting rid of tweed. We're getting rid of roof tile.
It's my favorite jacket, man. Come on.
But just to have that functionality, it's worth it to them. And so and that's why when the C300 was announced, and everybody was like, they should have made it like $3,000 and affordable and blah blah blah, and people were complaining about it, and Red Scarlet's so much better, blah blah blah. And yet, as soon as it came out, like how much C300 footage did you see on Vimeo and on Twitter and everything like that? It was everywhere. I almost forgot about the Scarlet for a while. And it seemed like
every booth on the floor.
Yeah,
every
and so
booth has got one.
Apparently, for being a horrible
all the rental
idea
houses
by
must be
Canon,
out of
it's
them
doing
right now.
amazingly well.
I mean, the fact that they've been able to meet that supply at the same time too is rather impressive. I will say that.
Yeah,
We're creative though. Like we're super critical. Like just in general, like we're critical of our own work. But we're critical of like our cameras, and then so I think the whole thing is it's taken with a grain of salt because like the Mark III came out, which clearly means that the DSLR movement is not dead for Canon to turn around and make upgrades to the Mark II. And then all I heard was just like complaining about Mark III doesn't do this, doesn't do that, and it was like blah 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 blah. And then I get here, and everybody is shooting with the frickin' Mark III. And then we're sharing, we're with Fresh TV, and then their post guy has one. He's like, I love it. I love the post production. The footage looks different. So it's funny is I heard all this complaining. Everybody bought one, and B&H is sold out and everything else, and nobody can get one right now. So, I mean, I think the C300, I mean, when we saw it when we were in Chicago, it was like, it's impressive. I mean, it really is. It's a sharp camera. You know, it's just, so I just think everybody's looking for that multi-purpose tool where it's like the Swiss Army knife of cameras, where it's like, oh, it shoots low light. You know, I can light a scene with a match. You know, I can also shoot on the surface of the sun. You know, I mean, like, you know, I mean, everybody's looking for this grand. I can do 8K all the way down the, you know, I mean, so I mean, that's just kind of what I see. And at some point, you know, I know what my 5D does and doesn't do. But again, I do make adjustments like that, where I'm like, you know what, I'm not going to shoot when I can see the roof of someone's house. Because as I make a slight motion, that thing just does this, and then, you know, I mean, so you just know that. You go, okay, no shots with roofs. So,
Every company knows the height. You guys remember when the Scarlett was announced, and they had the old DSMC thing, and then they had like the Super 30, or like the 2/3 inch sensor, and then the Super 35 and the full frame. And they had that like giant, like
Monstro.
160 megapixel sensor. Like, of course, it's red, but it's just one of those things where it's like, why? I mean, yeah, I don't know. There's.
Well, I'm curious to see how the market accepts, for example, the Blackmagic, because, like you said, everybody went gaga over the Scarlett and dissed the C300. But once they started finally seeing what the real result was, what the video looks like, people were selling their Scarletts, not canceling orders, and buying the C300. So everybody's really excited about the Blackmagic, but let's wait until we see what the heck it puts out for real.
Oh yeah.
And that could just be a flash.
It's only limited. It's limited to 30 frames per second. Not that it's horrible. So is my DSLR. But like again, I've said this before. I wanted to get an FS100. I really did. I liked it. But my clients couldn't see the difference between it. Not that I showed them, but I knew that I'm not going to make more money with that. All it's going to do is make my life easier. So the FS700 to me was, all right, high speed will make me more money. I will get jobs because of high speed. And so that's worth the investment to me. And so like the Blackmagic, okay, more latitude, yeah, that's great. But is it going to be that note? If I light a scene perfectly on a DSLR and shoot everything in the right, you know, dynamic range of it, or I get a little lazy in the Blackmagic and then just do it all in post, what's the difference in my actual cost?
His laziness is my more work. Yeah. So when he says lazy, it's not lazy
so
for
the
me.
real question is, Sean, what do you think about him getting an FS100 or an FS700?
I'm gonna be on every shoot. Yeah. Make sure that he's not being lazy.
Yeah, but you're not getting paid for it.
You know, the great thing is, though, you mentioned
More work for me no matter
FS100 and the fact that a lot of people aren't able to tell the difference. I recently AD'd a feature using the FS100 on it. And because of the limited budget that we had and the fact that we shot for 5 weeks straight, I noticed that, granted, you know, there's a huge difference we talk about in terms of color grading and post work in the FS100 versus a DSLR. But solely because of the fact that we used an FS100 kit, which was budget savvy, we were able to up the production value of the film more than tenfold without a question. And we were able to handle all the posts as well as all the special effects that we needed to as well. And in that sense, it was really great for that budget indie feature or something else along those lines, giving you the opportunity and the flexibility that you really need to do what you want.
Well, you know, you're talking about that. Like, if you're choosing from the ground up to what camera to shoot on, I think that's a good way to do it. For me, I've wrapped my entire production company around DSLR shooting, so we're optimized for audio, for video, for rigging, all that kind of stuff. So for me to change to an FS100 isn't like changing my budget in a way that I'm going to make more money. And right now, that's what I got to be focused on.
Because really what we're doing is we're adding, because we're not going to stop shooting that.
Right.
So we're having to basically add another departmental, divisional, whatever. Thingamajigger.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the technical term.
I'm going to shoot everything in DSLR, then the slow motion stuff, I'm going to have my FS700 for it. That's like all the production value that just went into that.
Well, and for me, like I said, I would love to not have to do, you know, syncing audio in post.
Right.
I would like to have more latitude in the camera.
No offense to Zoom, because the H4n is amazing. It is great.
No, it is.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
It's an awesome piece of
What are they, sponsors?
I know. Maybe. All right. But yeah, all of those things said, like the FS700, the first thing that just jumped into my mind is HD at high frame rates will make me more money than what I can do before. And to me, that's where, like, if I bought an FS100 with lenses, stuff like that, but about $5,000-6,000 investment. I know that if I buy FS700 for $10,000 when it comes out, I will be able to pay it off quicker than if I bought the FS100 and just continue shooting on DSLR. So that's the logic to me there.
That's the biggest thing that's so annoying about people complain about different cameras. Every camera does something well and something not so well. If you can find the right camera for the right price, so say if you can buy a C300 and pay it off, go do that. But if you can't, it doesn't make sense. If you're just doing personal stuff and you can't actually ever pay that off, it doesn't make sense to use a camera like that. So I think it's actually a good thing all these different formats are coming out at different price levels, because you can buy the camera that fits exactly what you need. You don't have to buy more camera than you need anymore.
It seems like it's like people going out and buying like tons of sports cars or something.
Yeah, right.
It's just like, no. What do you need, man?
Right.
I need to ride to work.
Right. Right.
Here's the transportation that
Yeah,
you need.
right. Buy
A
a
to B,
used
man,
car,
A to B.
right? Yeah, exactly.
All right, so
Well, it's 10 o'clock, and this is the last day. It's Thursday. The show floor is only open till 2, so we need to get out there, guys. So great. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for all coming out. Appreciate it. Handshakes around.
Pass.
You're always there.
Hey.
friendship. Oh, yeah.
There we go, double. Yeah.
Okay.
There we go.
Now for real. Awesome.
Hey, whoa, what about me?
gentlemen.
What about
Yeah,
me?
what about
Pleasure.
POV
Dave.
cam. What about my POV
first
cam?
person handshake?
Yeah.
Hey,
Just grab the
Convergence
camera.
is off. Oh, there we go. 3D, damn it. It's not 3D.
all right.